Welcome, welcome, welcome to this Venus Alchemy, Venus Retrograde, and the Gemini Goddess webinar that I, Kaylin Castell, and Tammy Brunk are offering today. We're so excited to have all of you here with us, and then also excited for those of you who will be hearing this on the replay, because oh my goddess, this is an amazing Venus cycle that's coming upon us, and as we're completing this particular Venus cycle. So we thought we would just begin by invoking the alchemical goddess, the also known as the metamorphic goddess. And then Tammy's going to give us an overview of what we're doing. So in whatever way works for you, to just bring yourself present, to allow yourself a deep breath, maybe putting your hand on your belly or your heart or both. And if you want to say these words out loud with me, because you are all muted, feel free to do that. Here we go. I am the goddess of alchemical transformation. I am all endings and all beginnings. I am ancient and I am newborn. I am you, making your most precious final offering. I am your life and all that defines you. Give away to me what you have spent a lifetime acquiring, including all your wisdom, insight, knowledge, and experience. Know you are so much more than any of this. I offer my life, my self-experience, myself, my experience, and surrender again and again and again and again and again and again, dying to be reborn. My galactic womb gives birth to the flowering universe, and all is made new through this transformation. I am your quantum leap into the unknown, into the beyond. I am profound grace, compelling you to abandon all that is not love, urging you to make the final surrender into your true heart. I am that peak moment of bliss when you see the other side. I am embodied enlightenment herself. I am the new earth. I am you as the fully realized rainbow goddess, new world storyteller, awakened and transformed. Let us dance the new dream together in cosmic bliss, playing the divine game with joyful abandon, breaking all the rules and creating anew. It is done, it is so, blessed be.
Thank you, Kaylin. So for any of you who have just come in, the reason that Kaylin just offered this beautiful kind of invocation to the alchemical goddess is because we see this phase of the Venus cycle as the phase where the goddess, who has been activated through the entire Venus cycle, goes through her metamorphic phase. So we've come to recognize her as the alchemical or the metaphysical goddess. So it's she who is arising now in this really magical window where Venus disappears in the beam of the sun. And in this period, it'll be about 12 days from about today until about the 9th of June. So we're just activating that right now in our circle, and we're excited to be offering this today on the day that this, again, technically we're using the 10-degree distant from the sun, but this is kind of the window where Venus goes through this very potent phase. And if you listen to the video that we offered on the page, if you haven't yet, we recommend it. Then we break down the way that we look at all 4 phases of the Venus cycle, the ways that Venus alchemy does that. So do you want to, basically, Kaylin, I guess I can do this.
You can do this, but also just tell them what we're going to tell them.
Okay, sure, absolutely. So tonight, what we're going to be exploring is we're going to do kind of a left brain, right brain thing, which I think is very Venusian personally. So we are going to begin, I'm going to explore a little bit more with you around what is this metamorphic underworld phase? What is it that we're stepping into right now that is the completion of one Venus cycle and the beginning of another? And how can we work with it? That's what we're going to explore here in a moment. And then Kaylin is going to take you on a kind of a journey to really go deeply into exploring what makes this particular Venus, this next upcoming Venus and Gemini cycle so special, how to look at it in a bigger viewpoint, how to look at the sacred numbers that are connected to it, how to look at how it fits into the other cycles, and what are some other features of this particular Venus cycle that make it so incredibly extraordinary. And of course, so she's going to share that, and then I'm going to explore more of some of the different faces of or archetypes of the goddess that we are going to be journeying with over this next 1.5 year cycle. And so we'll be diving into that, and then we will complete, well, and even in the midst of Kaylin's, we'll have a little time for activating and embodying the Gemini playful goddess, because we want to bring her alive already. Good goddess knows our world needs her. And then we're going to complete with an activation. So just a really simple chant activation. And then we'll do a little bit of a Q&A, and we suspect people will have lots of questions. Kaylin, did I miss anything?
I think you got it.
Okay, great. All right, so just to speak a little bit again more into where we are at in this current Venus phase. So just Kaylin and I, and again, there's a video that we posted on the page. We recommend it if you haven't seen it yet, because we really break down how we in Venus alchemy, and also prior to that shamanic astrology, how we view the Venus cycle and what we see the 4 phases as being. So there's the morning star, there's the Inanna underworld cycle, there is the evening star cycle, and then there's this cycle, this most mysterious magical phase, which is now the metamorphic underworld Venus phase, otherwise known as the interior, i.e. it used to be called the inferior conjunction with the sun. So this is a cycle.
Just quickly to say, the reason we use interior, because it describes where Venus is between the sun and the earth. And inferior implies that it's less important, but it's not. So that's why we have changed the language on that, just so that, because it can be confusing for people.
Yeah, it can be confusing. So inferior, interior, we call it interior. You will often have heard it as inferior conjunction to the sun. So this is a brief time when Venus is retrograde. She crosses between the earth and the sun. And from the perspective of the way we're working with the Venus cycle, she is completing one cycle. So we have been working with one meta goddess, one feminine principle for 1.5 years during the last Venus cycle. In this case, right now as we speak, we are completing a Libra Venus cycle. So everyone who's been journeying with us, we've all been in this really profound meditation collectively around bringing alive within ourselves and the world around us, the relational goddess in her most embodied, most radiant, most healed, most cleared form. So that's the work we've been doing collectively. So this is the completion of that cycle. Right now, there's this potency of that coming to completion. And then we're going to be beginning. So you could say that there's the seed point, the beginning point of the Gemini Venus cycle. Many people would say would be when Venus is with the sun on June 3rd. We will actually see the beginning of the cycle as the ancients did, which is when Venus rises as morning star in around June 9th, and that's when she begins her Gemini cycle. So the old goddess is dying, and she is simultaneously being reborn as the Gemini goddess. So it's kind of like a mirror for what we collectively as humanity are going through right now, in an even more sped up form in the moment with everything we're experiencing. We're going through a massive, massive death and a rebirth simultaneously. So this is just another potent window where we get to experience that through the lens of the sacred feminine, of the divine feminine, of the goddess. So this metamorphic underworld phase, the transformational intent, and you'll know that in our classes we talk a lot about intent, that everything is intent. What the intention we bring into how we work with this cycle informs the way that we show up and the way that we experience the magic of it. So the intent of it is for us to shift from one form and identity to a new form and identity. So we're surrendering our old identity. So like the Libra goddess, she's done all this work for 1.5 years, and now it's just, she's surrendering it all. She's letting go. And so are we. So surrendering old identity, limited perspectives, awareness for rapid transformation into a new identity and liberated consciousness. We're experiencing time and reality more fluidly. Is that not true? Right now? Oh my God.
I will agree with that somewhat.
Oh my gosh, Kaylin, yeah. Some of us even more than others. Experiencing expanded awareness and liberation from the constraints of linear time and 3D reality. And I will also say it can be really good for all of us between today and the 9th of June to take some time out of time to really not have to be tied to a linear calendar. If you can do it, to do that, give yourself that gift. creating a field of possibility, magic, and joy that uplifts others and expands and accelerates cosmic consciousness. Taking a quantum leap into consciousness that accelerates personal and collective, and I can't read that, Kaylin, can you read the rest of that?
Evolutionary development.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Great. So that's it. Do you want to say anything else about that, Kaylin?
Well, just, I mean, this is just the bare surface of it all, but we wanted to give you some idea about how this cycle and this time. So we're in an ending and beginning, basically. So when we're in the ending and the beginning of anything, there's a between time. It's not fully ended. The previous cycle hasn't fully ended, and the new cycle hasn't fully begun. So we're in that huge alchemical time, hence the invocation to the alchemical goddess. So just to give you that sense of it, and with Gemini, there's this, for me, I'm feeling sort of that more playful, creative. Let's have some humor. Let's play. Let's tell stories. Let's not be so serious. I'm already feeling that piece coming through. So that's what we hope we are bringing to you today.
Yay.
Yay. So just for those of you who maybe haven't seen the 5-pointed star, when Venus rises as morning star every 19 months, and we look at the date as being when Venus is 10 degrees from the sun, but sometimes it actually happens sooner, depending on the declination, and there's a lot of other factors, but you have to have some way of determining it, and usually when Venus is within 10 degrees of the sun, she's not visible. Interestingly, tonight, Venus is within 9 degrees of the sun, and it might be that Venus is visible, it might not, it depends on your horizon line. It'd be interesting to see if anybody does see Venus tonight. So if you see that and want to let us know, we would love that. But basically, this last cycle started November 1st, 2018 at 29 Libra, and now the new cycle is starting June 9th and 10th. Actually, Venus reaches 10 degrees from the sun on June 9th in some time zones. Probably, and then, and sometimes rises and is visible before the 10-degree thing. So this is again approximate. And so these are the dates for the upcoming next ones happening after this. So we'll go to the Capricorn cycle, and that actually means that Tammy and I will be coming back to the starting point. We started doing this work with the Capricorn cycle in 2014. Guided by the Circle of Grandmothers, and just sort of this huge magic that has happened around all of this time. So anything you want to add to that, Tammy, before we jump into the other slides?
Oh, I mean, I think that it's so exciting to be at this point right now. And also, I'll say it's my personal Venus return, and it's Kaylin's, it's her nodal reversal, right?
Yes.
So we're both carrying, right? We're both carrying some big Gemini medicine, and I suspect many of you are as well. And whether or not you have the Gemini medicine, as we're sharing this, we're inviting you to participate with us in this bigger journey, of course. And it's just, well, there's so much more Kaylin's going to explore here that I don't need to go into, but I will say that Venus is out of bounds. Venus is in the sign of Gemini, and Venus is in the metamorphic phase. And all three of those energies all are this massive wild card, time out of time, unexpected experiences, magical, Kairos time, all these things. So just to honor that, this is some pretty wild energies that we're navigating, and we're glad that we get to do it with you.
Yes, and that just thank you for saying the out of bounds things, because it's outside the boundaries of ordinary reality when Venus is at a extreme declination, and we literally can see that when she's stationed retrograde on May 12th. She was near the North Node, and this we'll see as we go along is a rare occurrence. That it was 56 years ago when Venus and the North Node were together in Gemini, and 56 years ago when Venus stationed retrograde with the North Node, but it was in Cancer, not Gemini. Anyway, well, I'll show you that in a moment. But you can see how Venus is, this star right here, right above Venus, is called El Nath, and Venus is way off the ecliptic. And we're going to see how this has been the case it's from April 1st to June 1st. So for 2 months, we have Venus outside the boundaries of ordinary reality, helping to create something new. So this is, again, just being able to see this a little closer. I actually meant to change the order of these slides. I forgot to do that. Oh, well. So we'll see in 1964, Venus and the North Node were conjunct in Cancer, in the very early degrees of Cancer. So that means that because the nodes are moving backward through time, it was very close, within 3 degrees, and really 2 degrees of the North Node moving back into Gemini. So Venus stationed retrograde on May 29th in 1964, 56 years ago. And there's this magical thing that happens every 56 years. Venus and the nodes return together. And so this is something that we talk about in the shamanic timeline material. And it's an incredible, magical time, because it's really, especially, well, for anyone, it's like you're getting a deeper connection with, if you're a woman, your divine feminine expression in the current life, that's also aligned with your destiny. And if you're a man, it's that deeper connection with the inner feminine and your destiny. So I found that my age 56 Venus return was really transformative and powerful. So in 1965, you can see here, Venus and the North Node were together around 14 degrees Gemini. Jupiter happened to also be there, and Venus was just 11 degrees from the sun. So it just risen into the evening sky. Maybe was visible, maybe not. In the evening sky rise, it's a lot more tricky to see Venus, but technically was an evening star around that time. And so what we're seeing is that in 2020 and 2021, there are going to be 2 exact Venus conjunctions with the North Node in Gemini. The first one August 5th at 28 Gemini, and the second one on May 17th of 2021 at 10 Gemini. And then in January of 2022, the nodes shift to Taurus. And so there won't be a Venus conjunction, or, you know, a long time that Venus is with the North Node in the next cycle. So that's just something to be aware of. So this is super rare and super amazing that we have this going on. And literally 56 years ago, it started out in Cancer and then went to Gemini, and now it's in Gemini the whole entire time. So this is showing you this is Venus and the retrograde. So like where Venus is coming back to, where Venus is going to station direct. So you can see that it's through this constellation we call the Bull, and Venus is at an extreme northern declination for a lot of that. But on June 1st, we'll come back inside the boundaries of the sun. So because basically Venus has been out here when it journeyed up to where its station point, it was way out here, and now it's going to start moving back towards the ecliptic, so it's not so far off that. And I actually probably could have maybe made this a little closer to the ecliptic, but whatever. Anyway, that's where the star map is showing it. Okay, anything to say about that? Tammy?
No, just that I love that you bring up, and I know there's so much more that you could say, of course, because Kaylin is really one individual who I think carries more of the star knowledge than anybody else I know. And so when you talk about the horns of the bull, you know, to just really honor that's a very significant placement in the sky. And so just that is really exciting that this is the line it's straddling. So it's exciting to imagine looking for that and seeing that.
Yes. So tonight, right? So tonight, and I know some people it's already, you know, past this time, but we can see where Venus is, and it's starting to come back, and, you know, in between the horns of the bull here as so 17 Gemini, 8. The sun is at 8 Gemini, so that's within 9 degrees, and so that means officially Venus has not visible, and based on the degrees, and actually astronomers agree with that. They will tell you that, you know, it's technically not visible, but Venus is, of course, especially in Gemini, is
Yeah,
going to
she's going to do whatever she wants. She's going to break the rules. You can be pretty sure.
On June 3rd, Venus and the Sun will be exactly conjunct at 13.5 degrees of Gemini and sitting between the horns of the bull. So this is, I know some, as Tammy mentioned this earlier, some people look at this as the beginning of the Venus cycle, but it's not visible. And so ancient cultures didn't start, they didn't do new moons when the sun and the moon were invisible. They did them when you could see the first crescent moon. They didn't start the Venus cycle when Venus was invisible. They started it when you could see it. So I think this is extraordinarily important because it is the center point of the metamorphosis that Venus is going through at this time. And so it's like that, you know, the Libra piece being, you know, perhaps transformed in the alchemy of the sun, and the Gemini piece getting ready to move forward. But to me, it's the ultimate alchemy of, you know, the transition when Venus and the sun are conjunct.
So powerful. And it's like it is like a conception point, you could say, or a seed point. It's often seen that way too, as a seeding point. But so it's potent to work with that in a very private kind of way, or a very, in a really different than the kind of public ceremonial kind of activations when you acknowledge it collectively.
Yes, beautiful. I love that. All right. So then on June 9th, when Venus is technically and has shifted now into the morning sky, and is rising with Aldebaran. And so this is of all of the Venus risings that happen in 104 years, starting in 1948 and going to like 2052, I think, this is the closest rising to Aldebaran that is happening in that cycle. So and Aldebaran being one of the 4 royal stars, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But it's the eye of the bull. It's one of the brightest stars, and one of the stars that the ancient alchemists saw as super important when planets were within 6 degrees of this star. That was when they would make talismans and potions and do certain kinds of ceremony and that sort of thing. So we've got Venus with Aldebaran rising into a new cycle. So amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah. This is just another view of this. It's on June 10th. So basically when Venus and the sun become 10 degrees apart is on June 9th in some time zones and June 10th in other time zones. So it's kind of like a June 9th, 10th thing. So on the morning of the 10th, this is Venus rising up with Aldebaran. And that's really going to look that way for a few days, especially as Venus is retrograde and is going to come back past this part of, or actually, I'm sorry, going this way, going back past and going further away from Aldebaran, and then we'll come back over time. So, yeah, pretty cool. June 19th, the moon is going to come by retrograde Venus, and Venus has moved further back away from Aldebaran at this time because we're getting close to the station point. It'll station direct on June 24th. And you can see here's Venus and the moon at 6 degrees Gemini together. So this is not part of the story of Inanna's descent or ascent. But it is an activation, an alchemical activation with the moon showing up with Venus in the sky, and would be worth seeing. But Venus is still retrograde, so we haven't begun the descent journey yet. That won't happen until Venus stations direct on June 24th. So we see this as preparation, and we could imagine that meeting with the moon, Venus is getting some deeper insight, some magical, mysterious information to help support her in her journey as she gets ready to make her descent. Anything you want to add, Tammy?
Oh, no, I think that's perfect. I mean, it's beautiful to see it all unfolding like this.
Yeah, so here's where Venus is stationing direct on June 24th at 5:21 Gemini. And you can see, you know, because when she was rising with Aldebaran, she was here, and now she's moved back quite a bit away from, and we'll start moving back forward to line up with Aldebaran again. So it's pretty cool. And this is, you know, the reason we like to give the star maps and this information is because when you go outside and you look up and you see what's going on, you can tune in and open to receive your own messages and your own download from this information that we've shared with you. And you'll know these are the dates. This is what it's meant to look like in the sky. And then you can just open yourself to receive. You don't have to know all the details, just open to receive the information. So on July 16th will be the first Venus moon gate when Venus is direct and is beginning her descent into the underworld. It's going to happen at 13 Gemini, about 3 degrees away from Aldebaran. Aldebaran's kind of hiding out here. The opportunity, and Mercury is going to be low in the sky as well, and the morning sky will have shifted by then because Mercury is going to go retrograde on June 17th, I believe. And so they're you know, Mercury's kind of hanging out in with Venus in a loose kind of way, you could say. Right? And Mercury's in Cancer. So one of the things that we like to talk about is the galactic cross at the galactic edge. And so the plane of the galaxy and the plane of the solar system they cross, and this is where the June solstice sun rises and is on the hand of the high man. And this only can happen for a time period every 26,000 years. So I want to just go back here, and here's the plane of the galaxy and the plane of the solar system crossing, and we can see how all this is kind of happening in this area of the sky. This one's not quite as clear, but let me see. I think there was a clearer one here, up here a little. Yeah, this one. You can see this is the galactic cross, and Venus, this is in the evening sky, but Venus was moving up that direction and then started moving back. So this place in the sky is significant for lots of reasons. But definitely during this time on June 20th, the sun is rising right here and also happens to be an annular solar eclipse on that day, right on the cross. And then of course, Venus will come to be here later. And I'll give you the dates on that in a moment. But we won't see that annular eclipse, but just to know that there's this alchemy, this portal, the ring of fire. An annular eclipse is when the moon is not quite big enough to cover the sun. It's like a total solar eclipse, but not quite big enough. So there's a ring of fire that's left around the moon. And it's incredibly alchemical. So here we are with Venus in her, just starting her new cycle in the, this alchemical goddess energy. And this is happening at the center of the sacred hoop. So here's what's been going on. On April 3, Venus was with the Pleiades. And literally, I hope many of you got to see it because it was astounding, and it'll be 8 years before it happens again. Venus looked like it passed right through the middle of the Pleiades. We saw it for several nights, just like in the evening sky. It looked like it was just rising right up into the Pleiades, and then looked like it was right inside them, and then a few nights later it looked like it was just right beyond them. So that happened, and that is the edge of the sacred hoop. And I really couldn't make a circle out of this. My technical skills are somewhat limited, but the sacred hoop of stars. So this is a hoop of stars, and this was the entrance of Venus into the sacred hoop. Then on June 9th, Venus is with Aldebaran as it's rising into the sky. On June 20th will be when we have the annular eclipse with the sun at the center point of the sacred hoop. So you can see in the sacred hoop, there's a cross. And in this hoop of stars, there is a cross, the plane of the galaxy and the plane of the solar system crossing. And the Lakota recognize this as the sacred hoop of stars. So it's a very significant place in the sky. And then on July 31st, Venus returns to the place where it was when it went retrograde. So it's going to take a while for Venus to get all the way back there. And then on August 7th, Venus is on the cross, on the galactic cross at the galactic edge on the hand of the high man. And then on September 26th, Venus exits the hoop. So really, this is an extra long time of Venus being in the hoop, the sacred hoop. starting on April 3 and going to September 26. So anything you want to add?
Oh, just, I think, well, I just wanted to mention that a lot of people we will take Q&A, so we might not always, sometimes people will track all the questions and comments. We're not quite doing that, but a lot of people are just chiming in to say, my Venus is with or my North Node is in Gemini, or my Venus is at 9 degrees Gemini, or so 2 people with that. So just to honor that just to acknowledge people are getting, really, we have personal connections to all these things. But the other piece, Galen, is I wanted to say, how many degrees is it again when it's stationing retrograde? 5 degrees,
right? When Venus stationed retrograde?
Or when it stations direct, rather, on the 24th.
Oh, it's around 5 degrees Gemini.
So just to say too about that it's not right on it, but still the ancient astrologers would have perceived that when something was within 6 degrees of an activation of if a planet is within 6 degrees of an important star cluster, it's going to be activating it. So, 0 Gemini is part of the Pleiadian star cluster. So really, it retrogrades even, it already has come back almost all the way to the Pleiades as well when it stations retrograde. So just to kind of, that's pretty amazing too.
Yes, so it actually kind of sits between Aldebaran and the Pleiades. So it's like extra powerful activation that's happening because the Pleiades is one of the alchemical stars, and the Aldebaran is one of the alchemical stars, the stars of the ancient alchemists, who they had specific ceremonies and things that they did when planets were within that. So yeah, thank you for that, Tammy. That's awesome.
Yeah, so if anybody has any place in their chart that's close to 0 Gemini, 29 Taurus, like right around there, that's going to be with the Pleiades. Somebody just messaged about that. That's a really good thing to know.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. So what we're seeing here is this map of the sky when Venus transited the face of the sun in 2012. It also happened in 2004, I'm sorry. And this is a Venus. So basically it's going to be 105 years before it happens again, and it won't be in this part of the sky when we have a Venus transit over the sun. So literally when Venus is supposed to be invisible, it was visible, which is kind of a remarkable thing. And that the Mayans really saw that as like regimes might fall, major things would happen when Venus became visible, either through an eclipse or through a transit of the sun during the time it was supposed to be in the underworld. So, so on June 7th, 2004, Venus transited the face of the sun. On June 5th, 2012, and it was visible in the US in 2012, I hope many of you got to see that, was pretty spectacular, was when Venus transited the sun. And then now we're going to have Venus with the sun on June 3rd, 2020, and it's not close enough for a transit to be visible, but it's really still close. Like it's just going to skim like above the sun, just skim right above the sun. And then it'll be 243 years from 2004 before it will happen again. So this is rare in this part of the sky. So it's rare, and it's happening between the horns of the bull. So this is significant because many ancient cultures saw a new cycle, like a new galactic cycle, or a new, maybe it's not galactic is the right word, but new, a new major cycle, a turning of an age, a big turning of an age happen when the sun would appear, or the moon would appear as a new moon between the horns of a bull after a equinox, or a cross quarter point, or a solstice, or something like that. So this Venus transit the Venus transits that happened, and this Venus retrograde being the next one 8 years later, happening between the horns of the bull, feels like it's something for us to tune into, to be aware of, and to just keep inviting the information of what that is about for us. Like, we don't necessarily know, but our world is changing pretty fast right now. So anything you have to add to that?
I think you hit it. It's good to know. I think we all appreciate knowing the bigger cycles. And just again, I keep seeing this Venus cycle as the next octave after 2012. You know, the world didn't end in 2012, but according to, you know, many of us, we know that that year, major, massive shifts and changes happened. And I love Barbara Hand-Klau's concept around that it was that point at which every single human began to be able to access all 9 dimensions of reality, like to become fully multidimensional, that possibility opened for us in 2012. And
I would agree with you on that, and that it was because of the Venus transit over the sun that happened, not necessarily because of the December solstice, because there wasn't, I mean, the December solstice was less like any other December solstice, but this was a rare, remarkable event that took place in 2012. So yeah.
So potent. So then what's the next activation of everything that the downloads we got then? And wouldn't it make so much sense that this would be happening with the Gemini Venus goddess, because she's the one who really fully opens us up to our multidimensional nature? I think that's what we need right now. We really need our full capacities, our full potential to be activated. So I think it's really exciting.
Yes. So this is just a quick look at the fact that there are 4 royal stars of the ancients, and they represented the 4 directions: Regulus in the north, Fomalhaut in the south, Aldebaran in the east, and Antares in the west. And so that this was something that they looked at in terms of when these stars were prominent. There were certain, at certain solstice points or equinox points. And I've listed that here. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but they were also used for navigation, and they would be very prominent when there were important events that were happening in the sky. And so the ancients were tracking that. They felt these royal stars were important. So here we have Venus rising into the morning sky with Aldebaran, just to give you another sense of how important this is. What does it mean? Maybe we don't really know yet. And maybe we want to stay open to the magic and the possibilities of what that means, but to know that it's possible and to be aware and watching for that, that's what we're inspiring everyone to do here.
Absolutely. And I think too, even though this is a much longer topic, but the signs and the constellations are 2 different things. But the ancient, we don't have to explain why that is right now, just know it. Many of you know that anyway. But that the ancient Greeks would have said that when you look at a star or a planet in the sky, you have to consider to what proportion, and I'm going to say this wrong, but to what proportion are we considering the constellation and the energy or the medicine of the constellation, and to what proportion are we considering the seasonal sign? So in this case, when you have the seasonal sign of Gemini, Venus is activating that, whether it's the Pleiades or it's the Eye of the Bull. You have the energy of Gemini, which we're quite familiar with, the seasonal energy of that, and then you also have the bull, the energies of the bull, which isn't exactly like Taurus, but it can be seen as more feminine and a bit more earthy in some ways. You could see it like that. So that's also part of what we could activate. When Kayla and I were talking about this, we were talking about wanting to bring in a little bit of embodiment. Maybe that's why I often think that there's something about embodied Gemini that is the magic that we're bringing in right now.
Yes, I love that. And I just hope that we're transmitting our excitement and also the magic and the mystery that is possible for all of us now with what's going on. And literally it's our attention and intention that is helping to create a reality, and the great above, the mysteries of what's going on in the sky is helping to inform us that something huge and magical is going on. And then what we do with it is how we become the seeds, we become the possible manifestations for what that's about. So this is amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Carolyn. So some faces of the Gemini goddess. Actually, Kaylin, I just realized that you didn't have the numbers magic in this.
It's later. And I don't have the numbers magic in this video, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit at the end.
Okay, good, great, awesome. Okay, so every time we lead these journeys that we've been doing since 2014 with each of the different meta goddesses, we are in kind of a bigger meditation with that particular. We will say that it's that the sign Venus rises in as morning star is the meta goddess, or the larger feminine presence that is on the world stage for that next year and a half, doing this deep death and rebirth. And so collectively we're going through that, personally we're going through it. And so we often will work with a particular goddess or guide for the cycle. Now with Gemini, it may be that we work with a number of them because Gemini, of course, contains multitudes. But these are some of the faces of the Gemini goddess that we can tune into, and there are many others, and you might tune into them yourselves and even share that with us, what you think she is. So the rainbow goddess, she has that connection to the rainbow goddess, beginning with Iris, the rainbow goddess in ancient Greece. She was a messenger, and there's a lot around rainbows that we're going to explore, and Kaylin will talk more about that as well. And so any of the rainbow goddesses have some kind of a connection with Gemini. Ixchel is a Mayan goddess who also has some connection to the Gemini mysteries for many reasons, but one of which is that she's also the rainbow goddess. So we would look at her potentially as having some of the Gemini medicine as well. So does Seshat, who is the scribe in ancient Egypt. And so she also, because of course Gemini has so much to do with finding our voice and the written word and the spoken language and prayer making and song making and being the scribe, and also depending on what else is coming through, sometimes even having some oracular energies. So Seshat is one, and then we often use this image here to describe Inanna, and yet she can sometimes also be seen as Lilith. And when I see this image, I think of Lilith because she was originally a nature spirit, and she is the feminine who knows that she still has teeth and claws and wings, and she still has that animal creature nature about her. And one of the aspects of Gemini is that she is a shapeshifter. She is shamanic in that way. She can access all the different dimensions of creation. She can pretty much take on whatever form she wishes. So Lilith is one of those criaturas, one of those creature goddesses that we can connect to. Changing woman is Dene, or Navajo feminine figure we can also connect to, because again, Gemini is, she changes shape and form. She can take on many different qualities. Ellen of the Ways is another dimension of the Gemini feminine, and she's incredible. She's also a psychopomp. When I say that, what I mean is she's a guardian of the different worlds. She helps to guide individuals from one world into another. She takes you into a different dimension, into a different zone. And we'll talk a little bit more about the psychopomp in its traditional meaning, but she embodies both the shapeshifter and also kind of the psychopomp or the guide into other worlds. And so I really think we will work with her, and I'm really excited to work with her. She's Celtic. She's amazing.
And I love how she's standing in the portal here between the dimensions. Yeah. And so, so if we think about that psychopomp being able to go interdimensionally through, to the multiverse, wherever people might need to go, and she's in the rainbow portal.
Beautiful, yes.
How cool is that? Yeah.
Yeah, super amazing. Wait, one more, Kaylin. There's one more I didn't get to yet.
Oh, sorry.
Which was the muses. And these muses were from the Walt Disney movie Hercules. But I thought they were cute because, Gemini does have a function as the creative muse. And we really need that creative muse right now, collectively, to dream our new world together. So again, she is many. And so she also is embodied by the collective of the muse or the genius or the daemon, any of those spirit energies that connects us to our creative brilliance. So she also opens that portal for us.
Excellent.
So some of the questions for the Venus cycle that we might invite, because again, this next year and a half is going to be a time to just kind of meditate on the feminine mysteries. It's a time where in our journeying through the cycle, Kaylin and I, we will guide women and men through a process. We will collectively be in this deeper meditation around some of these kinds of questions. So meta questions to meditate on for 2020-21 as we make choices and tell a new earth story together is, for example, is the world I am creating fun? Does my inner child like it? How am I using my creative imagination to make the impossible possible? How am I accessing, or what would it take to access my multidimensional brilliance, my inner alchemist and magician? What would it take for me to know when it is necessary to break the old rules and create my own guidelines? How fun would it be for me to collectively leap beyond polarity and duality into infinite possibility and unity consciousness? So an affirmation might be, I now create fertile networks of co-conspirators in the grand game of reworlding and co-creating the new earth. So those are just a few things. Do you want to add anything to that, Kaylin?
Well, I like that you maybe you don't see it because somehow it's not showing up on your screen, but co-creating the new earth playground.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Because, you know, this is, I think, of all of the meta goddesses, the one that likes to play the most, be creative,
Mm-hmm.
you know, do that. So the new earth playground, I love that piece. And I just want to make sure.
Yeah, thank you. Because, yeah, I'm not seeing the very last line for some reason, but
right.
that new earth playground thing kept coming through really strong at the beginning of the year. It's just like, we need this. And I kept feeling like, whoa, there's such a heavy Saturn Pluto energy at the beginning of 2020. How can I possibly even utter the words playground or playful or what blasphemy? You know, it's supposed to be serious and hard, right? And it is. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's hard. And yet, creating a new playbook. And yet, what keeps coming through for me, and I think many are, is that play is a serious business. It is what's needed. It sounds paradoxical, but we're needing to learn and remember how to play. I think our world depends on it actually right now. And Kaylin's been helping me remember that when I get serious. So, Kaylin, do you want to talk about this in any other way?
Sure. So the Gemini, you know, embodies the wisdom statement that we each contain multitudes, meaning, you know, I think that we have multiple selves, right? We have multiple identities that we are engaging all the time. I have my mom's self and my daughter's self and now I have a grandmother self and my, you know, friend self or my teacher self or my whatever self. So we're always in different expressions of who we are. And so we have different identities based on whatever role we might be playing at any given time. So we do contain multitudes of selves, for one thing, within us. And so the idea is that there are more than 5 unique feminine archetypes animating our inner and outer worlds during the Venus in Gemini cycle. And so Tammy's already spoken to a lot of them, but if we wanted to just like distill them down, I think you did a really good job of doing that, Tammy. The creative muse, the master networker, the psychopomp, the trickster Heyoka, the rainbow goddess, the magical child, the messenger. And so, and there's probably more we haven't even thought of yet. We'll probably be thinking of as we go through the journey. They'll be wanting to be heard. They'll be trying to get our attention.
Oh my gosh, I didn't include the New World Storyteller.
Oh,
but that's okay. I'm going to talk about it in a minute. That's fine.
Yeah. I might have accidentally left that one out when I read.
Oh, well, if you did, then I'll talk about it anyway.
Yeah.
So the shapeshifter goddess is one of, I've spoken into this a bit already. So Lilith is one of those, you know, half creature, half human. And these goddesses reconnect us to our animal nature, not only our animal nature, but our capacity to merge with and become any aspect of creation. And according to author Paul Shepard, who I just love, he believed that what made human beings special and distinct was that we have a capacity to actually access the intelligence of all species on Earth. And part of his premise was that too, was that if we lose species, we lose part of our broader intelligence as a species, which I always thought was really profoundly sobering. And it's, you know, something to consider. So Gemini gives us this sacred capacity, though, to access all these different intelligences of Gaia intelligence. So not only other species, but the nature of a river or a tree or a bird, we can become that. I really deeply feel that Gemini gives us access to this Gaia intelligence in a really unique way. And this is what Gemini Goddess within us is awakening to through 2020 and 2021.
Yes.
So you didn't, Kaylin, it's here. So the other thing we kept focusing on was Gemini is the new world storyteller. So one of the things to understand is that in the Gemini cycle, the way we look at it, the morning star phase is when we are letting go, like Inanna the goddess, letting go of her crown and all these other things we are letting go of whatever stands in the way of a full expression of that archetype. So in a way, we're unraveling the old story through the Morningstar phase, the old story that doesn't work, the old story of forgetting or of disconnection or whatever you want to call it. And Gemini is going to help us do that. And then through the evening star phase, I mean, we're going to be getting the new story the whole time, but there is this kind of this interesting unraveling and raveling, reweaving process. So she's our creative muse through 2020, 2021, opening us to a new Earth story, serving and supporting all life on Earth. And some questions for the New World Storyteller include, what would it take for me to renew and retell my life story for total healing and empowerment? And what emerging new story of humanity is inspiring me now? So we always approach this from the level of the within, the without, the personal, the collective. So that's just, we always will give you these questions to work with. So that's something to consider for you now.
I love this image of the, you know, it's like telling the story creates the images, and it begins to create, make that creation more real in our reality. So our telling the stories are, and then living those stories and whatever that's about is just, this image is like, whoa. Love it.
Isn't it beautiful? It's so potent.
Right?
Just like, it's so essential. And, you know, it's been a really challenging, it has been a challenging time for many of us in terms of bumping up against our old energies in the last couple of months. I would say, you know, whatever a person's biggest shadow is probably been rising in the last couple of months. Personally, collectively, we've been experiencing that. And I think what I keep trying to remember, and Kaylin, you've been embodying and beautifully helping me to remember, and I forget and remember again, is that need of the focus on, you know, we can, and you've always said this, that we inform the mysteries as much as they inform us. And so the Gemini storyteller is really helping us remember that we can't let other people write the story for us anymore. We need to write it for ourselves, and we need to write it together, a new story that works for all of us and that works for the earth. It's really time to stop letting ourselves be woven into the narrative of others who may not be fully awake or might really be coming from a hurting old place. So it's time to write something different. So that's another archetype.
Right before you jump in there, I just wanted to say, because somebody said they didn't get a chance to write down the affirmation fast enough. So we probably should have said this in the beginning. This whole slideshow will be available once the video is posted. So you'll be able to, you know, and also once the video is posted, you can go back and watch it and stop it wherever you want and whatever. But you'll have access to that. And then somebody was asking about dates and of the cycles, and we might be able to talk about that a little bit more, but that there are Venus Moon conjunctions, there's, you know, stationing direct, you know, the Venus Moon conjunctions, the underworld time, the morning star, evening star, it's pretty complicated, so I don't know that we'll have time to go into that here so much. Just want to say that.
Probably not. But we, you know, you can see that's what our journey is going to be about, and you can see some of those dates on these slides when we look at it later. So another archetype is the female psychopomp. And she is, the psychopomp historically was like Anubis in ancient Egypt, the dog or the jackal who would guide the souls to the underworld or to the other world when a person passes. And one of the things that's unique about a psychopomp is that, you know, unlike most individuals, if you go to the underworld, you're going to be taken apart. You're going to be dismembered. You're going to go through a shamanic process of a deep, very potent process. The psychopomp has a certain level of detachment, which is necessary so that figure, that guide, can take the soul to the underworld and not necessarily be completely, it's going to be a different process. I'm not saying that the Gemini goddess is not going to bring us into some dark places. Clearly she will. That's part of the journey of polarity and duality. But there is a magical quality to the psychopomp where the way I see it is that we collectively, in working with the Gemini Venus cycle and understanding who she is and what she's capable of, we can help become those psychopomps to hold the hand of others as we're going through this collective descent process that we're still in the midst of, and support each other. So she supports us with that, helps us safely navigate change and move between worlds and states of consciousness. And when we find her within, we are capable of navigating change with greater ease and grace, accessing our multidimensional nature, capable of bending time and space, embarking on our personal and collective descent and renewal journey with courage and resiliency. And
I love that. That's so great. So I just want to point out back here also the sacred geometry, the flower of life imagery that's behind her. And just to keep that in mind, because when we get to the 369, the number piece, this is based on the 369, this sacred geometry. So I'm not going to explain it now, and I'm not going to go into the great details of it, but there will be a little activation we'll do at the end. So
awesome. And by the way, that was Ellen of the Ways also. That's who that was.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So the Gemini goddess as master networker and reconnector is another aspect of this, where she is that part of us that's awakening now that really wants to find our playmates. We want to find the people we want to play with, and it's coming on the heels of the Libra cycle. So there's been a lot about creating community in the Libra cycle, but now it's even taking it to the next level. How can we create these really fertile networks together? How can we reconnect each other to play a better game, to have more fun, to create something new, to use our imagination, to really fashion and weave, and through our prayers, through our stories, through our through the songs that we sing, through all of these things coming together, we create a new world. So as she awakens within us, she helps us ignite the divine light of our playful, magical inner child. She helps us find our co-conspirators in the mischievous and playful game of co-creating a new earth playground. She casts light in a world of darkness, creating a vibrant, living, pulsing network of aligned humans, bringing more magic, more fun, and more play into our worlds.
Yay! That is so cool. And boy, does Gemini love to network. I see it all the time.
Totally. She loves it.
Yeah.
And she's also the rainbow goddess. And we're going to explore a lot more of this in the class, what that means. She's a Gemini the direct messenger from divine source, a harbinger of hope in dark times, and an activator of our rainbow light body. And there's so much more around that. And Kaylin has begun to bring some of that to my attention, and we've started seeing that more, and it's really potent. So that's a big intention for us collectively, is that we enliven and activate personally and collectively our rainbow light body. And when we come together collectively, we can create amazing things. So what do you want to say, Kaylin?
And there's the power of, when two or more are gathered, or, they're literally, they know in physics now that when that whatever number you have, you can square that. So it's like if you have 2 people, it's 4 people. If you have 4 people, it's 8 people. If you have 8 people, it's 16, 32. It's like the power is exponentially increased. And so when we join together to do this, we are exponentially increasing the power of our personal intention as well as our collective intention. And so one of the things that has been coming up for me was I did this deep dive into the numbers 369. Tesla says these are the keys to understanding the universe, these numbers 369. And we did a whole thing about this before. We'll probably do another whole thing about it in the sacred geometry. Of course, the 3 is the triangle, 6 is the hexagram, and 9 is the enneagram in sacred geometry. And those numbers literally are ways for us to get a key into the deeper mysteries of the universe in some way. So when I was hearing 369, I kept thinking of this little chant that I experienced when I was a kid. And I think we did it in jump roping or something like that. And some of you may recognize this. I said it to my kids and they kind of look at me sort of blank, huh? But it's 369, the goose drank wine, the monkey chewed tobacco on the streetcar line, the line broke, the monkey choked, and they all went to heaven in a little rowboat. And this was just staying in my mind, and I kept thinking there's got to be a chant here that we could really energize from the 369 number magic. And literally, Gemini is the third sign in the, we start with Aries, so Gemini is the third sign, and Sagittarius is the 9th sign, and I think Virgo is the 6th sign. So the earth signs are the 369 if you count them the way that they're counted in more traditional astrology. So anyway, we wanted to leave you with this chant so that you can activate it. I've been singing this every single day. I love it so much. And so 369, now's the time to actively live in a new timeline. I actually changed the words up a little bit to say, I am actively living in a new timeline. You can do it either way. The time is now. I'm living how I'm meant to be in my radiant rainbow light body. So this is a way that we can work with this whole over the 19 months, is to just continually affirm with our voice and with the chant. It's easy to remember. Once you get it, it's pretty easy to remember the words of this. But meanwhile, let me see, I think I probably need to stop my share. And my daughter, who I shared this recently when she was visiting, sent me this song that I was like, oh, somebody who knows the 369 song. So it may not sound good, but we just invite everybody to get up, move around, and because it's really snappy and fun. So here we go.
Yeah.
369, the girls drink wine, the market to back on the street car line. The line broke, the market got choked, and they all went to heaven in a little rowboat. Clap, 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 snap, clap, 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 snap, clap, clap. Everybody dance to the music. Right hand. Three, 6, 9, the goose drank wine, the monkey tripped her back on the streetcar line. The line broke, the monkey got choked, and they all went to heaven in a little rowboat. Clap, 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 snap, clap, 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 snap, clap, clap. Everybody dance to the music. Okay. It's 9, the girls drink wine, the market chipped back on the streetcar line. The line broke, and the market got choked, and they all went to heaven in a little rowboat. Clap, 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 snap, clap, 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 snap, clap, 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 clap your hands and dance to the music.
It's going to cut now, Caitlin. Thank you for sharing that. We just decided to do that when we were talking before the class, because I just have to say, when I've had a hard time lately, it's just been because I'm not moving my body enough. I'm just dancing like that, just like my inner child feels happy, like needs it. So thank you.
Right? So we want to open it up for questions. I know we have some questions in the chat that we can go back through and look at, but people are able to unmute themselves if they have questions they want to jump in. And we'll also kind of try to look. And
I'm going to go through the final links, Caitlin,
what?
before we do that.
Yep. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll do that real quick. So we'd love to have you join us for the Gemini Meta Goddess journey. We'll have 8 live classes in the morning sky, and there'll be 8 live classes in the evening sky, but we divide it up into 2 different ones. And there's links. There'll be links. I think there's already links on the class page that you can go check it out. Our first class will be July 5th because the first Venus moon gate, as we showed in the slides, will be July 16th. And I'm gone from the 7th to the 13th or something. So we decided to do it before I left. So that's the, anything else?
Yeah, if it's confusing at all, basically, again, we talked about the phases. So the way we take people through the whole 1.5-year Venus cycle, but we divide it into the morning star class and the evening star class. And a lot of people are signing up for both at the same time. And then a lot of people are signing up just for the morning star Venus class. So that's what it's going to show up as when you go to the link. And you can just go to Venus Alchemy. If you somehow don't have it, go to Venus Alchemy and you'll see it on our front page. This is our class. It's the morning star class. So we hope you'll join us. It's incredible. We take the people who are drawn to this. There are about 30 people who have returned every single time, and they are wise women and men who have so much wisdom and brilliance, and will, are holding space with us in a beautiful way. So we hope you'll join us.
Yes, and there was something else I wanted to say. Oh, what was it? Oh, I lost it. Oh, the 4 phases. So there are 4 phases of the Venus cycle, but primarily what we're looking at from the ceremonial point of view is we do the 2 phases, and then we always do something for the underworld, but people kind of do the underworld more on their own because, that's a very personal time.
Yeah, and we're preparing you for it the whole time in the morning star phase anyway. That's what it's all about. You've got plenty to work with in the underworld.
Right.
So everybody's been chatting, but I think because there's so many chats, maybe we're not, it's fun. Thanks so much for this fun, informational, and excellent presentation. But maybe let's take just a couple questions. I guess we could say from this point forward on the chat, we can look at chat messages, but also to say that if people want to unmute themselves, we would welcome people also, with the Q&A, just jumping right in and asking some questions. We'll take a little time for that.
And people can raise their hand, although I've got it on speaker view and I also have my chat up, so I don't know if I'll see that, but maybe you would, Tammy. And the other thought is that...
and you might want to put it on gallery view now. So if you know how to do that, you go up to the right and look at gallery view and you can see all of us.
There's a lot of us, like 106 people. So that's a lot. But I also wanted to say, because I see that somebody said, I'm a morning star. And one of the things that Tammy and I have also done is we've gone really in depth into all the phases, the meta goddesses, the Venus signature, what it means when you have Venus in a sign, who's the meta goddess, what star phase are you in, and or gate, the inner star phases, as well as what it means when the sun is in a certain sign and when the moon, how we integrate all of that in the outer planets. So if you're interested in that, we call it the Venus Signature Series, and we've had a lot of fun with that too.
Yeah, those are our 2 main classes and they're really potent. So the question from Teresa is, to what extent do you factor the house Venus is going through during each phase? She's going to be going through more than one house. I'll just say that, So really, we don't focus too much on that. We're going to talk about the signs she goes through. And, if you're really familiar with astrology and know how to work with it, I think it's wonderful if you want to track personally what houses Venus is going through in your personal chart. Yeah, do that for sure. That would be more of something if you're going to go to either of us for a session. We might have Venus reading because we both do those. We might talk about that if that's something you want to explore. So who's wanting to talk? Pamela?
Yes, I had just one question. When the replay comes out, will we be able to see the videos as well?
The video is going to be posted probably probably tonight. I'll post it. I'll get the video posted, and then we'll send an email saying it's been posted. But it'll be on the class page.
Okay. Very good.
There was a video that talked about the Venus retrograde. Did you see that?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. So because we didn't really go into the details of the Venus retrograde because we wanted to have more time to focus mostly on the Gemini and what's going on now. So there's 2 videos there. One to get the real details of the Venus retrograde. That would be for any Venus retrograde, not just this one. And so you'll have access to that as well. Yeah.
I'll go look for the video then. But thank you. Thank you for the class. Thank you for all the work you do and for offering these free sessions for us. I truly appreciate it each time that I get a chance to participate.
Thank you so much, Pamela. We're so glad you're here. So someone's asking, Sandra is asking, how long are the classes? The classes are about an hour and a half. So sometimes a little bit over, but generally about an hour and a half. We try to keep
Sometimes
it
an hour and 40 minutes or 45 minutes, just because we have lots of questions or things at the end. So, you know, we're just
we would be done with our part typically by 90 minutes. So you can always listen to the Q&A or not.
right. And they're once a month. So there are 8 classes in each phase. So the morning star phase has 8 classes, and the evening star phase has 8 classes, and each class is about 90 minutes. And we try to do breakout groups, and also there's Venus buddies. You can have somebody to talk to and connect with around your process. So, yeah.
Hello, can I say speak?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, Kathy.
Okay, my name's Kathy. And are you aware, I found this out when I was living in Greece. At Delphi, that sacred place where the oracle was, every 8 years, they had a ceremony. And I heard about that, and I didn't understand, like, why. So that's when I went on this investigation, and I found out it was the heliacal rising of Venus. They would have these huge celebrations. And that would happen, you know, when the Venus rose with the sun in Greece, it was at a certain point, like, you know, Gemini. But then in the other points of the Earth or of the star, every 8 years they would do it over there, like say in Capricorn, or, you know. So it is so magical because you can feel it around the whole Earth. You know, she embraces us all.
You're bringing up something really important, Kathy. That is because the Sumerians and the Babylonians, who the story of Inanna and Ishtar, the entire cycle of Venus is modeled after those stories. I mean, basically those stories are modeled after the entire cycle of Venus. I said that backwards.
Yes, yes.
Right? So they describe where Venus, the story describes where Venus is in the cycle. And they use the heliacal rise of Venus closest to the spring equinox. And so because that was to them, Venus rising in the east ahead of the sun was when to do their collective 8-year ceremony. And you're describing something similar as what they're doing in Greece. You may not know when they were doing. Was it at the springtime? Was it the summertime? What, you know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd be fascinated to know that.
Fascinating research, because you're really, you know, get it right, Kathy. When you start learning these things, she really grabs you, right? Like these are the places where she is just like, okay, it starts to intrigue you. Because I would, even as you're saying that, it makes me think the Sumerians, and even Inanna herself, was a pretty warlike goddess. I mean, she had many.
Yeah.
She was quite warlike, right? And so how interesting that it would potentially have been what we would, well, gosh, it would have been seasonal Aries even then. You know, it would have been the Aries energy.
It would have been in the spring.
Well, she's the divine protector. She protects her people, her children, you know, and nothing stops her. Yeah.
Right. So how interesting it would be if the heliacal rise really was at Delphi, truly was in the season of Gemini. That would have been very interesting.
That's my Gemini's my Venus, so I'm sure it was.
Well, we could just pretend like it's true, because Gemini loves to do that, right?
Yeah, right. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Kathy.
Right.
So I wanted to say, somebody else was asking, how do you determine what phase the Venus cycle you were born into? And that is a longer conversation that you will learn about through our Venus Signature Series class. Kaylin, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, you know, if somebody contacted us and wanted to really know, we could probably look it up for them. But if you do the Venus Signature Series, not only can you figure out what was the meta goddess, but where you were in what star phase you were in, or Venus phase you were in, whether it was underworld, metamorphic underworld, morning star, evening star. whether you were at a Venus gate, and just because somebody was asking about the Venus gates the chakra gates are only counted when Venus is direct in the morning sky until she disappears into the underworld, or when she's in the evening sky until she goes retrograde. And then we don't count them as chakra gates anymore. Still, and I was mentioning this earlier because on June 19th, there's going to be a Venus moon conjunction, but Venus is retrograde. It's not a gate. It's just a magical time to see Venus and the moon together as preparation for the journey, for the descent. So did I answer the question, or did I just get off track?
I think you answered it just fine. I mean, because it's a little longer conversation, but you can learn about that through our Venus signature series.
Oh yeah, so that you get a document that you can find out where anybody is from like the 1929 to 2052. All the Venus cycles are outlined. It took a while to put all that together, but it's part of what you get when you do the Venus signature series.
Yeah. So now Faye is asking, what gate is Venus at now? Is there a gate after the crown? And we actually, people looked into this differently, but we perceived of the last, when we say gate, that's when Venus and the moon come together, like Kaylin's saying. And so the crown chakra gate, that's the 7th gate. We actually counted it 8th gate. So the way we've been counting that is that 8th gate lasted until Venus had another conjunction. And that last Venus moon conjunction, when was that, Kaylin? That was just like a week ago? Saturday, I think, last Saturday. So at this point, we're in an in-between time where this is not a gate. The goddess has already let it, she's reclaimed it all. She is whole and she's ready for her most profound transformation, maybe transfiguration, however you want to see that. So
somebody's asking if the influences of these events happening collectively but are stronger for those with more in Gemini. Yes, absolutely. We would say, I guess there's maybe the military term might be you're on the front lines. but I like to say leading edge, because everybody's feeling it, everybody's being affected by it. But if you have it personally, you are definitely feeling it. If you have the North Node in Gemini, this is not only important for you because Venus is in Gemini, but because you're also in a nodal return that only happens every 19 years, and that is significant also. So it doesn't mean that Venus is going to be, so like for me, when I had my age 56 Venus return, the North Node had returned back to its sign in Sagittarius, but I have Venus in Aries. So, and it wasn't anywhere near the same. So what we really want to get across to everyone here is how rare it is for the North Node and Venus to be together as a cycle is starting. Especially, I looked back to 1800s, and I didn't find another time when it was happening. And the only other time that was close was in 1964, and they were together starting out in Cancer. So this is super rare what we have going on here, and significant at an amazing time in the world when we have so many wild changes happening.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to see, I saw that there were a couple questions. One was Faye let's see, who was asking to describe a little bit. No, Sheridan, you're asking more about describing the Inanna story as it relates to the Venus cycle. And I think that is a good idea because not everybody understands what we're talking about. And then Elise is asking, what about the gate? What does that mean? So what we're saying is that this ancient Sumerians had a story about their great goddess Inanna, about her descent into the underworld and then her ascent from the underworld. It's a death and a rebirth story. It's a powerful myth that is used by women across the globe even now in many ways. But in that story, in the morning, she is required to remove a vestment, like a crown, like different adornments at each of 7 gates. She goes through 7 gates, lets go of something in each gate, and then when she comes back up, she reclaims something at each of those gates. Those correspond to the chakras. And so when we refer to gates, we're referring to the Venus moon conjunctions because that's how the cycle connects to the Inanna story. But of course, this is why we offer such an intensive course, because there's a lot more to this. We can't just talk about it in 2 minutes.
Right.
It's more of a mystery school training, right?
And in fact, we have a whole long video exactly on this topic that describes each section of it for those who are taking the longer course.
But of course, you know, we want you to be able to understand what we're saying, and it's
Right.
not confusing. So
I
that's
know
what
it's
we
a
mean
little,
by
little
gate.
harder to try to sum it up here.
Right. So what we mean is that when Venus and the moon come together, that represents a particular gate that the goddess or Venus is moving through. And it has to do with the activation of a particular chakra. And so that's how we work with it in this initiation journey, if that hopefully helps to understand a little bit of, because it is complex and it's not complex, you know, at the same time.
So wait, can I just ask something about that then? So the myth of Inanna was written or created in conjunction with the Venus cycle. It's not something that just the two of you have married, like you have with the chakras, but the Inanna's story was meant to tell the story of the Venus cycle. Is that correct? I didn't realize that before until you said something. And I've listened, you know, I mean, I've been around a little bit, but okay, that's really cool to know. I didn't realize that. But then you guys added that chakra piece into that, correct? Because that's obviously not part of Inanna's story.
Well, no, because the gates are representative of the chakras. A lot of people have written about this. Other people who have looked at and kind of done more research on the Inanna story, and they say that it describes the vestments, the crown, you know, the brow chakra, the rod and staff, the necklace at the throat, the breastplate at the heart, the ring of power for the solar plexus, you know, so there's these vestments represent these chakras. And so she's removing these vestments as she goes down into the underworld. And then she's reclaiming these vestments as she's coming back up. So she's reclaiming she's releasing distortions around that chakra as she goes down, and she's reclaiming a healthy relationship with these chakras as she comes up.
And that is part of the original Inanna's myth with Venus connected to the gates were connected to the chakra. That was part of the whole original story. Is what you're saying. All of it.
Yes.
Okay. I thought it was like these three separate pieces. Well, this was a question I actually been wanting to ask you guys, so I'm glad that this came up. So thank you.
No, that's what's so incredible about it, and is that and this is one of the things I remember learning in, you know, Shamanic Astrology Mystery School from Daniel and Kaylin, was that specifically many more of our stories historically, perhaps those like Rapunzel and others, were actually descriptions of what was happening in the sky.
Yes.
And so this is one of the most vivid examples of that, where the Sumerians were literally describing in their story what happened with Venus. And I would say, you know, I don't know, Kaylin, I don't think it was something that most scholars knew about, that it corresponded with the chakras.
I'm not saying that they did, but there are some that did, because I've seen the writings about it. I've read the books about it, and they linked that up. So I'm just saying, I'm not saying that I don't even know how many really did. I read a couple books that connect them. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Great.
So,
do you know when the Inanna's story was first created? Do you know when the Sumerians did that, or even the Babylonians?
when, you know, at least probably around 5,000 years ago, at least. We don't know but it's on the Sumerian tablets, the cuneiform texts. That's where, and there's literally on the Venus Alchemy website, I'll put the link on the class page. There is Diane Wilkstein and Samuel Kramer. They did the translations of the story, and I posted it in one of like a section on our Venus Alchemy site. There's a book they wrote called Inanna, Queen of Heaven and Earth, or something, and they go into it more deeply.
Yeah, it's an incredible book. It will blow your mind. And there's just there's so much. There's so much more. That this is such rich territory. Thanks, Sheridan.
Hi, I have a question. My name is Shirala. Thank you for your beautiful presentation. My question is, do you need to be familiar with a lot of astrology in order to understand your Venus signature, or just curious? No, okay.
No, you didn't. Thank you, Shirala.
Shirala.
Shirala. Okay.
Shirala.
Thank you.
Yes.
Beautiful. What a
Thank
good
you.
question, because we do have people ask that a lot. It is, I think it's one of the easier to
Okay.
understand courses, because really what we're doing is we're taking something. The biggest complexity is actually probably going to be more understanding the mechanics of the Venus cycle itself. But what
Okay.
I always feel is that it's a little challenging at first, but because we're really embodying it, where we're breaking it down in real time in a very experiential way, this is why it's like a mystery school training, because you will get it. Even your mind might not fully get it in a left brain capacity, but that by the time you're done, you will embody it. I think, does that feel true for people who've
Yes.
been in the course? Just for, yeah, does it feel true? Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
But in terms of astrology, and so those, again, a lot of these women who've been in the course, does it feel like it's difficult in terms of the astrology?
We really try not to, well, I mean, we want people to connect to the sky. We want to keep people to understand the archetypal energies that are present at the different, as we go through this. So we do talk about that. And here's the thing that I say to people all the time, because we are trained to try to get it in a left brain way. And we try to give it to you in a left brain way, but also in a right brain way. So let go of the need to know it in a left brain way, because the more you're with it, and this is something that, in ancient cultures, they grew up with this. This was part of what they knew as their, it was just something that they lived. And we don't do that. So we do have to have a little bit of a left brain process to activate it. But we're doing as best we can to make it as embodied as possible. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, Kayla and Tammy, I think that my experience with it too is that because I had lived, quite a bit already when first tapping into this, that it definitely you understand it from your own life experience. It's very powerful that way. So if you could like journey on many different levels with this, and you wouldn't actually need to know astrology.
Okay.
Right. Thank you for saying that, Sarah. Thank you so much, because I see people, and sometimes people are like, okay, fine, I'll just let go of my need to know it with my mind. And then they get it eventually with their mind and their body. And then some people are just so stuck in their mind. It's like, I can't get it. I can't get it. I can't get it. And they're so into that mantra of I can't get it that they don't get it. And so the part of our challenge and our opportunity is to let go of the need to get it with the mind.
Okay.
And I think the other piece I often like to recommend to people is that there's a Greek word, anamnesis, remembering what the soul already knows. And I often feel we actually know this somewhere in our body, somewhere in our consciousness. We know this information. So our job is really just to give you the opportunity to kind of ignite that again, that remembrance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if you want to know the left brain stuff, that's cool too.
It's good. It's good for the goddess to learn. I love this book on Becoming an Alchemist by Catherine McCune. It's incredible. And she talks about how for the feminine and for women, it's really important to cultivate the left brain. It's really a huge part of our spiritual journey. Some of us are challenged by it. I know I am. But to use the left brain of the goddess is different than, disconnected, fragmented, kind of wounded masculine ways of doing left brain. Healthy masculine or feminine left brain consciousness is needed now just as much as right.
Yes, the balance between the two. Healthy balance, yes.
Yeah. So just looking to see if there's 33 messages. There's so many. All right. And still, if people, we're really going to try to hear from people who want to speak.
Rhonda's saying now she needs to go find out what gate she was born under. And I just want to say not everybody is born with a gate. Sometimes you're in what we call the between or the alchemical phase of Venus. So if you're born with Venus retrograde, you are not born at a gate. If you are born with Venus conjunct the Sun retrograde or Venus conjunct the Sun not retrograde, you are not born at a gate. So some people, most people will have a gate, but some people don't. And one of the things we discovered in the Venus signature series was like 45% of people will have a gate, either morning star or evening star. And then there's like maybe 1% of people will be in the metamorphic underworld, like where we are right now. And maybe 10% of people in the longer, what we call the Inanna underworld. So you're going to be somewhere in there, but you're not always necessarily going to be born at a gate.
Right. So I'm going to go through a couple more of the questions. One was, what was the name of the book? It was, it's the Diana Volkstein.
Samuel Kramer and Diana Volkstein on the Inanna, Queen of Heaven and Earth.
Yeah.
I will post the article, link to the article, and I think the access to the book, the name of the book is there too. So yeah.
So the next question is from Kate, is if someone like me has no planets in Gemini, how does this best apply, especially if we follow the whole journey? Thanks so much. So we totally skipped saying that if you have a birthday over the course of this Gemini Venus cycle that is divisible by 8. So for example, if you have a 40-year birthday, a 48-year birthday, a 56-year birthday, a 64 birthday, during the cycle, which begins June 9th.
72, 80, 88, and 96, just want to know
that. June 9th of 2020, and it completes in January 12th of 2022. If you have one of those birthdays in that time, then you are personally in a Venus return. So that's another place where you may have no other Gemini in your chart, but it's a really important cycle for you. But we have lots of people who go through the Venus journey with us, even when it's not a sign that they have in their chart. Because actually, this could be your best opportunity to learn to bring this medicine in that is not part of your chart. It's just, if you want to live in a more ceremonial way, it's going to be potent for anybody who takes it, really.
And also so say maybe you just went through a Venus return, or you're about to go through a Venus return, but you're not in one right now. Having done this helps you to understand it. And like for Tammy and I, we have been through this so many times now. It's like so integrated into our cellular DNA, right? And the people that have been doing this with us for a while, it's like in their DNA as well. So there's advantages to working with this. And one of the things that inspired us to do this in the first place was the fact that the Sumerians and the Babylonians every 8 years did a collective ceremonial cycle. And so it wasn't everybody's Venus return, but the whole community came together to do the cycle together, to do the ceremonies together at the 8-year Venus return, as very specific one, that when Venus rose as morning star. And that's what inspired us to do this, because we don't have to be in a Venus return to gain a huge amount of benefit from this particular cycle. Or any cycle, any Venus cycle. It's really cool.
Yeah. So that's, thank you for asking that question. It's a great question too. There are so many wonderful comments. Thank you to everyone for all the beautiful comments. If we had time, we would read all of them. And someone was asking, what was the Catherine McCune book? It's On Becoming an Alchemist is the book.
Really great book.
A great book for Gemini. Absolutely. It's On Becoming an Alchemist, a guide for modern magicians. It is
it's actually that book that inspired us to look at the between, because she talks about it in that book.
Yeah, that is one of my main guidebooks, I will say, just for spiritual insight. Yeah, I love so many beautiful comments here. All right, we've got people asking how to find their gate. We already talked about that. We know it's something you want to know. And again, the Venus Signature series is where you will we can really break that down for you. Yeah, it's so beautiful. Okay, just looking for a little more questions. What does it speak to when you have vertex and Gemini? We don't really do so much with the vertex, but I just say again, if vertex, in my understanding, is something that's a pretty beneficial thing to activate. So I would say go for it.
Right, exactly. Right. And Faye's saying she wishes we could get together for ceremony and get better at shape-shifting and meeting in that realm with you all. And I just want to say, Tammy and I have done live events. It's been a while, but we keep thinking about it. And we were thinking about doing it this year, but a good thing we didn't, because we couldn't have done it anyway.
We could later. We could, later in the cycle, we absolutely,
Exactly. This upcoming cycle, I think would be really fun to do it again.
it
Yeah.
would be really fun.
Yeah.
Really, really, really. So, okay. Well, I think that those are the main questions. Does anyone else have anything? Oh, Lilith and Gemini, how fun is that? So does anyone else, why is the 8-year cycle is from 2014 to 2022?
So in 2014 was when we started doing Venus alchemy, and in 2022 is when we returned to the starting point. That's 8 years later. So, but in between 2014 and 2022, there have been 5 cycles of Venus for 19 months. That equals 8 years. So that's what we're talking about. And literally, I keep Venus behind me, and the 5-pointed star, and the goddess reaching with the moons on either side of her. So yeah, so it's not that it's 2014 to 2022 one cycle. There's been 5 cycles, and we'll come back to the starting point in 2022.
Okay, so Anita's asking a question I do not know the answer to. Maybe you do, Kaylin. Because the eclipse is annular, how close is the moon to Black Moon Lilith?
I don't know, because the reason it's an annular eclipse is because the moon is far away from the Earth, meaning it's not quite big enough. So basically, it's from the Earth's perspective. What we're seeing when we look out at the sky, we see the moon coming across the face of the sun. And at a total solar eclipse, the moon is closer to the Earth and big enough to cover up the sun. In an annular eclipse, it's far away from the sun. The moon is far away from the Earth, so it's not quite big enough to cover up the sun. So there's a ring of fire, an alchemical ring of fire that's left around the sun. And and my understanding of Lilith is it's calculated. It's not Black Moon Lilith is not an asteroid. It's not a planet. It's a point in space that's calculated based on the sun and the moon. And so I'd have to look that up. I don't really know.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think we're at like an hour and a half. If
Right.
anyone else, I would just say, if anyone else wants to speak, has a question they want to speak to us.
Really
we'll
quickly, because we need to end this.
and then we should complete. How fun.
Yes, this has been amazing. So do we want to unmute everybody and have them say goodbye?
So thank you to everyone for showing up. You've been so much fun, so many amazing questions and comments, and we're so excited. So let's just say good night. So thank you to everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Goddess.
Really wonderful. Thank you, Rhonda, too.
June, love you.
And we love you.
Bye. We do.